Hey guys, this is Yoda. This will be my complete guide to Grim Batol. What we're going to do is we're going to go over a VOD of me playing this key on the beta, and I'll go through all the mobs and what they do and what the possible counter strategies are for them. So without further ado, we'll start the VOD. First three mobs you encounter are an Earthcaller and two Brutes. So we'll quickly go over these. The Brute basically just does a tank hit called Brutal Strike, and he also does Obsidian Stomp, which drops some swirlies. The Earthcaller is a spam caster. He spam casts Earth Bolt, and he also has a more dangerous cast called Mass Tremor. If you only interrupt one thing, make sure it's Mass Tremor, but I think like the top level, you're going to end up wanting to interrupt everything on this guy. So for now, I'm just going to shield him and run through as a paladin. Next week, we're going to pull it through to the Twilight Destroyer. This guy is considered a mini-boss type mob. He's immune to CCs and everything. He has two abilities, which we'll show soon. One is he's gonna cast very quickly. It's called the Umbral Wind, I believe. Oh, it's okay. The first one he does is cast Twilight Flame. So he's gonna pick someone and he gives them a dot. You'll see it's on the shaman. And this, not only is this a dot, it also makes you drop poop on the ground basically. And that poop takes instantly. If you ever walk over it, it's gonna like instantly do a bunch of damage. Next, he's gonna do Umbral Wind. So Umbral Wind is a knockback and an AoE. It is LOSable. You can see our guy running around the corner here to knock it hit. Our strategy here for this pull was pull these up to this guy, wait for the first LOS, and then we'll chain the next pack. So this pack has an Overseer, Earthcaller, which we already talked about, and another Brute. This is our like Lust pull. This Overseer is a new mob that we haven't talked about. So he's another mini boss type mob. He's immune to CC. He casts Rive, which puts a 10. It does a lot of damage to the tank. You'll see how much damage it does here. Boom. And then also puts this dot on you, or debuff, which is 10% increased physical damage taken. So this makes all of the brutal strikes hurt more. This area is actually kind of dangerous for tanks. I recommend only fighting one Overseer at a time. So yeah, usually your group's going to be focusing on the Twilight Destroyer because he's forcing them to LOS and he's putting some dangerous thoughts on them. As a tank, you got to watch out. Also happening in this pull is there's two Earthcallers, so since I'm a paladin, it's kind of easy for us, I guess. I just kick one and everyone else kicks the other one. But if there's no paladin, which is going to happen in most keys, you're going to have to like double up kicks on one person, and one person's going to kick off cooldown, and one will save their kick for Mass Tremor. So that's this pull. The Overseer also casts something called Reckless Tactics, which you just saw. If you did Alderman in Dragonflight, it's basically the same ability except toned down a bit. All the mobs do more damage, but they also take more damage while Reckless Tactics is up. If you're a tank, be very, very careful while this is happening. Plus, he's going to cast Rive, so you're basically taking amped increased damage from mobs that have a tank buster. Just be super careful. This area is actually very, very dangerous for tanks. Actually, this whole dungeon is, but this pull in particular is kind of dangerous. All right, so we lost. We blast down the dragon, kill a bunch of mobs. Chaining this mini-boss is kind of scary, honestly. I'm like hesitating a bit here since two mini-bosses can apply 2 stacks of Rive. But I decided to just go for it here. If I was in like a low-key pug, I would definitely just finish this guy off and then go. Here, I know I have bubble, so I guess I'm kind of okay doing this pull because by the time bubble's over, that guy will be dead and then the pull's tame. These mobs are more the same. One Earthcaller, two Brutes, and an Overseer. The next pull has two more Earthcallers. So the way I kind of chain this area is basically kill these Earthcallers are basically what's stopping me from pulling more, because we pull 3 of them, then especially like in a pug scenario, that's going to be really scary because there's 3 spam casters with bolts flying everywhere and Mass Tremor potentially going off. So usually the way it works is, well, I'll wait for this Earthcaller to die, and then I'll chain, so we only have to deal with 2 of them at a time. Once we have cooldowns, I do decide to go for the triple Earthcaller, I guess. Since I'm a paladin, I guess I kind of have faith in everyone to stop bolts. This chain is kind of aggressive, honestly. Wouldn't normally do this in a pug. But yeah, Mass Tremor actually does go off here. You can see it does a bunch of damage to everyone. Somehow I lose threat mid-pull. Got him off Paladin. Alright, so after this, we're going to do the Dragon Riding event. I say Dragon Riding, but it's not really Dragon Riding, so it's more like the bombing event. So we jump on these dragons. Once we're on them, you'll see at the bottom here, I have a 1 ability and a 2. So the 1 ability does way more damage than the 2, but you only have 5 charges to use the whole time. So basically you want to be spamming your 2, and then you want to use the 1 on like choice hits. This right here is probably the first time you're going to have a good hit. This 3-pack kind of patrols around. Sometimes it's next to the pack all over here, sometimes it's next to this, sometimes it's in the middle. You don't want to use your 1 if like these are split. You want to use 1 when these packs are stacked. So you hit as many targets as possible. So we use the 1 there since it's next to the other patrol. After that, we're going to spam 2. The other candidate for your 1 ability is this pack before the boss. It's triple Earthcaller and double Overseer, which is extremely dangerous if it's actually live. So any remaining ones it usually spends there. You don't have to use everything on your first fly. Usually I'll try to spend 3 to 4 ones on the first fly around. and then you fly back and you just spam 2 and then use your last 1 or 2 1 abilities. Anything that you don't bomb here, basically you're going to have to finish off manually. So we finish our dragon bombing run, then we're just going to go forward, finish off the remnants of whatever's here. These triple casters are like to pull into a dragon, so in Grim Batol, there's going to be a few times you see this corpse, deceased red dragon with like some shadow flamey thing around him. If you ever walk near here, it's going to spawn one of those Twilight Dragons. Here, we're actually doing it on purpose because these guys give kind of good count, but in your pugs, people are probably going to accidentally walk near these without, like, not on purpose. So what that does is spawns this dragon, and this dragon auto combats everyone in the zone. So if anyone in your pug run ever does this, then the whole group is in combat. So be ready for that. And also, just don't walk near these dragons if you can avoid it. One common mistake people made at the beginning was like, they're like, oh, I'm going to use my ability to jump over the gap. But then they had to walk past one of these dragons to use that ability, and they just spawn this dragon and basically wipe everyone and spawn an extra mob. Here, we're pulling it on purpose because we want count, but just watch out for that in your runs. You don't want to do this by accident. So this dragon is the same mob as before. He puts the Twilight Flame Dot, which drops poop, and also does some damage. And he also does the Umbral Wind, which you can LOS. I kind of bring him into the corner here to make it easier to LOS. By the way, this is the poop. So what it looks like if you haven't seen it before. Our strategy here is kind of just kill mobs around the dragon and then chain. So theoretically, I should be pulling this 3-pack pretty soon. Don't know why I'm taking so long. I think I was waiting for my Avenger's Shield to be up so I could pull with Avenger's Shield. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. All right, so we just chained to the 3-pack. Survive this Umbral Wind. By the way, this is a knock. As I mentioned earlier, don't get knocked off, otherwise you die. Once that dragon's dead, I guess we finish this pack off. Then I think I'm spawning the other dragon because these dragons actually give really good count. It's a completely different story, by the way, if you plan to spawn this dragon than if you spawn it by accident. Like, don't accidentally spawn the dragon and be like, oh, I saw Yoda spawn these dragons, surely it's good. Don't spawn these unless you're actually ready for them and ready to deal with them, otherwise you're almost guaranteed gonna wipe. Alright, so we pull this dragon into the next pack. I kind of like spawning these also because after we bomb all these packs, they're like really low, and it's kind of tough to like use your cooldowns on like mobs that are at 10% already, so this dragon gives you stuff to push your buttons on, basically. Alright, once we kill the dragon, we move on to the first boss, General Umbris. This guy, I think, is relatively simple. If you have fought Heimdall in Halls of Valor, he has a similar mechanic. So here's Commanding Roar. He just does damage to everyone, and then he spawns these dragons. They're going to cover 3 lanes, and you just want to move to the 4th lane. The graphic can be kind of hard sometimes, but if you can't see it, you can always pan your camera around and look for these dragons. But yeah. Next, he's going to put out these spikes. This rock spike doesn't do too much damage, but if you overlap, you'll probably die or take a lot of damage. The idea is you want to drop these off on the sides. And by the sides, I mean like not the side lanes, the side of the lane. So like notice how they're dropping it here and not like here. That's because when you drop it, it spawns this poop that doesn't go away for a while. Also note when you drop this, it docks you in the direction you're facing, so don't get knocked off and don't get knocked into bad stuff. He does the 3 lanes again. After every time he drops these rocks, when he does the lanes, he's also going to do Skull Splitter, which is a bleed on the tank. For some reason, Earth Ellie taunt works on him, so I don't get the bleed here. But it's 3 stacks of the bleed. You can dwarf it, you can cauterize and flame it, you can bubble it, whatever, or you're gonna seal through either way. And that's pretty much the whole boss. So he does Roar, spawns 3 lanes, then the spike. This is me actually get the bleed here. 1, 2, 3 big hits, and then I have a 3 stack of the bleed. Just heal through or immune it, whatever you have, or use a cooldown. All right, and that's the whole boss. Okay, we'll skip the rest. After this boss dies, there is now a checkpoint, by the way. That's a recent change they made after the boss dies. Next, we'll go into this pack. So this area has 3 of these packs, Molten Giant plus Triple Twilight Beguiler. While you're not engaging them, these guys are actually role-playing. What happens is the Giant will knock away one of these Beguilers, and then the Beguiler will like get to his feet and then stun the Giant. While the Giant is stunned, he's taking extra damage. So if you ever get here and the Giant is stunned, you want to pull like immediately. If a Beguiler's stunned, then probably want to wait like a couple seconds for the Beguiler to stun the Giant and then pull. So what these mobs do, actually, when you're fighting them, is the Beguilers have 2 casts. They have one is called Shadow Flame Bolt, and the other is called Sear Mind. If the Shadow Flame Bolt is just the bolt on cast on a random person. If it goes off, it does some damage. Sear Mind is a channeled stun, similar to Drain Fluids and Necrotic Wake. Basically, you don't want Shadow Flame Bolt. You don't want any cast from these guys going off while the Giant is casting Molten Wake. So this Molten Wake is an AoE. You can see him cast it. Boom. It does damage to everyone, and it puts a dot. So basically, you don't want to overlap this damage with the caster's resolving casts. Ideally, they never resolve anything, But if you're gonna let something go off, don't let it go off during Molten Wake. After he does Molten Wake, he has the same queuing. Every time after Molten Wake, he does Lava Fist. It's basically just a tank hit. Use a personal or defensive, and you'll live. It's kind of hard to stop all these bolts from going off unless you're playing like Paladin, I guess, or your group has a bunch of AoE stops. We have cooldowns also, so this pack just dies instantly, which is nice. Then we fight another pack, basically the same thing. If you were like not a Paladin and in an organized group, you would probably do like first kicks into second kicks into like a few AoE stops into first kick again, but we're just yellowing because it's the beta and we're pugging. All right, after this is a pull I like to do. This is not a pull that you actually have to do, but yeah, so there's these Twilight Earth Callers, which is the same mobs from before, and the Twilight Flame Renders, which is a new mob. So the Earth Callers are the same spam casters. Just kick, make sure Mass Tremor doesn't go off. And these Twilight Flame Renders are actually extremely dangerous for the tank. So they have two moves. One is the Shadow Flame Slash, which hits a tank for quite a bit of damage. Also puts a dot. You see this debuff on me, and this dot stacks. Another thing about this dot though is that for some reason it counts as a bleed. It can be cleared by Dwarf, and it can be cleared by Cautious Flame. They also class Blazing Shadow Flame. You'll see this like line. If you stand in this, you die, or I guess if you live, you get knocked up, but you're probably gonna die. As I said before, this pack is extremely dangerous for the tank because there's 4 tank hits and they stack up. Fortunately, I just bubble it and then the pack kind of just dies shortly afterward. Always remember that you can Dwarf and cauterize the dot, and try to have a personal every time you use this Shadow Flame Slash. So that's that pack. Then we clear the rest of the boss platform by killing these. By the way, while we're doing this, the boss is patrolling around. We've done a pretty good job avoiding him, but you can kind of see the boss over here patrolling. When you're fighting this pack, you want to be hugging the inside ring, otherwise you have a chance to pull the boss. Certain random things like pets or totems can also pull him, so just be super careful of that. Okay, so then after this pack dies, we pull the boss. This boss tends to cover a lot of space in the room, so it's kind of be careful where you're fighting him. If you notice, I drag him immediately to the inside ring, and he has 3 modes. So every time he phases, he casts Forge whatever it is. So the first one he does is Forge Axe. When he's casting the Forge, it pulses AoE damage, just kind of like the healer check here. The Axe basically changes his auto attacks, and he has one special move. So he auto attacks kind of slow with the Axe, and he also has Fiery Cleave, which is just baited on people. Boom, there it is, Fiery Cleave. And wherever he shoots, there's going to be fire on the ground, like for the rest of the boss fight, basically. So that's the Axe phase. Next, we're going into the sword phase. So he's forging them. We're going to take damage. When he has swords, his auto attacks actually hit with both hands. So this is kind of dangerous for the tank. Be careful here. If you have a cooldown, this is a good time to use it. After a few swings, he does Molten Flurry, which is another tank hit. Molten Flurry has both a physical and a magical component. So if you have any magic DRs, be sure to use them here. And he also puts sparks on people. You can see Molten Spark on Crims here. These sparks basically just drop poop on the ground. You want to drop them on the inner ring when possible. Meanwhile, he's hitting the tank with the flurry. That's the sword phase. Next, he goes into the mace phase. He's forging it, does some damage. What the mace does is it makes him do 1000% increased auto attack damage. If you're feeling really strong and you have like insane cooldowns, you can try tanking him like for ego if you want, but mace also makes him slower, so you can kind of just walk away also. Also note, while you're walking away, he drops this poop on the ground, which grows. If you have him all the way on the inside ring, it doesn't quite cover the full platform, but it basically just covers the full platform. Here I bubble, so he doesn't move too far, and then he resets. He just starts repeating mechanics. Now he's forging axe. He's going to do single swings in the cleave, and then it's going to be sword phase and mace phase, rinse and repeat. So that's the whole boss pretty much. Once we kill him, we walk to the exit. Ideally, you kind of fight the boss, like start the boss in the middle, then you end at the exit, but this time we started the exits and we ended at the middle. So we had to walk all the way here. All right, now we're in the actual really hard part of Grim Batol. So there's a bunch of mobs here. We're going to talk about all of them. There's these Beguilers, which we just fought in the last zone. They're the same mobs that were with the Golem. They have the Bolt and the Stun. Twilight Enforcer is a new mob. Basically, every time this guy melees you, he gets +1 stack. And that stack increases auto attack speed. At 10 stacks is the cap. At 10 stacks, this guy is hitting like crazy. Just like one of them is already enough to make you have to kite or use a personal. Fortunately, you can kite it out. Like if you slow him or stun him, then the stacks will drop and then he just goes back to being a normal mob. And he's to start like rebuilding his stacks, so try to play around that. These Warlocks cast the Bolt, same Bolt as the Beguiler. And they also cast a move called Enveloping Shadow Flame, which cannot be interrupted. And it recasts if you stop it, so don't even try that. It puts a massive healing absorb on people that can be decursed. And this Twilight Lava Bender is considered a mini-boss. Generally, if you fought a mob in Dragonflight called the Flame Goulet in Ruby Life Pools, he's pretty much the same mob. Above 50, he doesn't really do anything. He just like sometimes puts some spread circles out that don't do that much damage. Below 50, he starts pulsing AoE, which makes the spread circles even more dangerous. Basically, the plan with this guy usually is you don't want him to be below 50 while there's other dangerous mobs such as the Warlocks in combat. So what our strategy here is I'm going to wait for him to walk away. Then I'm going to pull everything. Basically, it's like a really big pull. And then if he walks in while the mobs are dying, that's fine, because like by the time he hits 50, everything should be dead. So we start this pull. I don't throw my shield here because I've pulled him too many times with the shield. And we start this pull basically. So there's also a Twilight, I forget the name, but the guy that puts the dot on me, there's also one of them in here. There's a lot of bolts in these pulls. Hopefully your group is like on top of AoE stops. If not, just try and kick as many times as possible. Usually it's not too dangerous for people other than the tank. Here's the healing absorb you can see. It's a curse. Devil gets decursed immediately. There's a bunch of healing absorbs. The key to these Warlocks is the healing absorb is a massive healing absorb, but it doesn't do that much damage. It ticks for a very low amount of damage. So if these people aren't in like danger and they don't need healing, then the healing absorb isn't super important, especially if you can decurse it. So the key to these Warlocks is basically pulling them when there's not outgoing group damage. When is there not outgoing group damage? When you're not fighting a lava bender, basically. I think it would have been fine to pull the lava bender here because these mobs definitely would have died before he hits 50. But we're playing it safe here. Okay, so we finish off this, then we pull the lava bender. You get to see him. He casts this blast. This blast, by the way, I don't know if it's going to be fixed on live. The graphic is sometimes bugged, and it doesn't appear immediately, but as soon as you see him start channeling this, he will face that direction, and that's where the blast is going to be. Next is going to come Dark Eruption. These are the spread circles. And then at 50, he casts Ascendance. Or Ascension. So this circle, they'll stand in this, he'll take a lot of damage. Just hit our DK there. Once he casts Ascension, he's starting to pulse AoE. You can see our health getting pulsed here. He still has the blast. And the dangerous part here is the overlap. We're actually like getting kind of trucked by this, just by one mob, by the way. This is the dangerous part. He's below 50, pulsing AoE, and that's overlapping with Dark Eruption. This is where you want to use your personal against this guy. See our Shaman Walls here. And then we finish him off. Hopefully you have some damage for this, and hopefully you're not fighting this guy with too much extra trash as once he's below 50, because you will just straight up die. Next we do a double pull here. Kind of the same pull as before. Some Warlocks, one caster, and there's 2 of these Enforcers, so you will probably see me kite here since I don't have bubble. This guy's at 10 stacks already, that's why I'm taking so much damage. Surely I'm kiting soon. Okay, yeah, we kite until we see these stacks drop. They drop stacks, I hodge the guy in front, and then we're good to start fighting again. Basically, that's how this pack goes usually. Next, we decide to fight this Lava Bender. You could technically pull this Lava Bender with Warlocks, but it would be very dangerous. This mistake has been made by many groups on beta. It's like the primary cause of wipes in this section. If you pull the Lava Bender with Warlocks and you focus the Lava Bender, then you get a situation where the Lava Bender is below 50 and these Warlocks are alive, applying healing debuffs. That's when these pulls become extremely lethal. So if you do end up pulling him with Warlocks, make sure you focus the Warlocks, not him. This guy is not deadly above 50. He's only deadly below 50. Anyway, we fight him. Same mob as before. Then we move on. We do this pull. Our mage randomly jumps off for fun. You notice that we put a skull here, because this is because we're saying in comms, kill skull, make sure the Warlock dies before the Lava Bender hits 50, because we've just done this too many times. We know that is the main danger of wiping here. Other than that, there's this Flame Render we've already seen and 2 Beguilers to interrupt. This area can be like kind of dangerous to fight in because there's like a bunch of line dodges and the fight area is very narrow. So watch out for that. If you wanted to split this pull, it wouldn't be too bad. Kind of a little bit slower, but yeah. Notice how we're all hitting skull here. The Warlock actually dies before the Lava Bender hits 50, so we're not really in the danger zone. The other 3 mobs aren't really that dangerous. This guy kind of hits a tank, and these are interruptible. So as long as you don't let cast go off always below 50, you should be fine. Someone does end up dying, but yeah, we finish him off. Then we do a double pull here. Same mobs as before. You treat the same you play it exactly the same way. Just interrupt as many times as possible. Decurse these. Hopefully, since you're in Grimatol, you have some decurses. If you have the misfortune of entering Grimatol without decurses, then you are going to be in for a fun time. And by fun time, I mean you're probably depleting. Alright, so this is the pack. We play it exactly the same way. Kite out the Enforcer's debuff, and then refight. Next, we're going to the boss room. These Lava Benders, if you pull one, it automatically pulls the other one. Technically, it is possible to do that pull. You just focus one down, kill him, and so but if they ever are both below 50, you're probably dead at the same time. Recently, we also discovered it's possible to fight this boss without pulling the lava benders, so that's what we'll be doing here. We pull the boss all the way to the corner, so there's no way that we're going to pull the lava benders. This boss is pretty simple in phase 1. He's just an orc, casts some bolts. The bolts don't even do that much damage. You do get a preview of the main mechanic here. These bolts are all the tank, by the way, so like kick is kind of optional, to be honest. So he spawns this ad, invokes Shadow Flame. After a brief period, it'll fixate someone. If this ad touches that person, it is a wipe. It's not like that person can just like get meleeed or whatever. If it ever touches that person, he explodes and just kills everyone. This Curse of Entropy, I believe, is a slow. Again, you can decurse it. Hopefully you have decurses when you're in Batol. Chains of Ice is super useful on these Shadow Flames, so are stuns. So that's the whole phase 1. The curse, the bolt, and the ads. Relatively easy to deal with. Once this guy hits one health, he jumps off and we get dragon. This is kind of like the real boss. When you see the dragon land, if you haven't pulled these, make sure you pull like with taunt, not with any random abilities that could potentially splash. And this dragon is basically like the real boss. He has all the abilities of the original orc, except when he spawns ads, this is kind of bugged, so it only spawns 1. Usually he will spawn 2 ads. So yeah, make sure you don't get hit by those. Twilight Buffet is a knock, and it also spawns these tornadoes that are running around. Obviously, they hit you, they do a bunch of damage. Don't let that happen. And then he also has a frontal called Devouring Flame. All in all, not the most difficult boss, in my opinion, especially if you're able to somehow stay in here and avoid the tornadoes. But basically, the number one way to lose is, as we just happened, do not touch these ads. If you touch this ad and it's fixating you, this is what happens. 2 people instantly die. I have like a massive dot. I think somehow, since I'm playing Paladin, we survive here. I think I bubble off the dot. This guy's playing DK, so he auto lives, and then I sack someone. Yeah, I lay the shaman and then like double res basically, and our shaman died. Do not, under any circumstance, let this ad touch you. Otherwise, horrible things will happen to you. We're very lucky that I'm playing Paladin. I had bubble up there. Yeah. All right, so that's this boss. By the way, at 50%, he quote unquote dies. He like goes away. You have to like kill this guy by 1 hit, and that's it. Look on the left here. This is basically the same pull that we fought many times before. Some warlocks, some beguilers, 1 enforcer that you have to kite, and 1 flame render that applies the dot. Deal with it exactly the same way we dealt with all the other ones. Okay, next we have the Twilight Destroyer plus some hatchlings. This destroyer is the same one from before. These hatchlings, by the way, kind of melee hard. You notice I instantly pop Guardian Mission King as soon as I hit them. If you have no cooldown, do not underestimate these hatchlings. They will fuck you up as the tank. Anyway, another thing that these do is when they die, they apply a debuff, which increases your shadow damage taken. So if you like did the calculations and you're like, oh, I survived the dragon's dot, or oh, I survived the dragon's dot, and then you have this stacking dot on you, or not dot, it's a debuff. Suddenly you will not be surviving that. So when you have this debuff on you, make sure you're very careful about what damage you take. This dragon is kind of the same mob we've been fighting. You just take him against the wall, so he's easy to LOS. He puts Twilight Flame on people, but he AMS this one. Next, I decided to keep an Invis pot here because these mobs are super annoying. These Corruptors plus the Hatchlings. Basically, the Corruptors do 2 moves. They put some ground effects that you have to dodge if you don't get hit. If you get hit, you get MC'd, and it usually results in a wipe. Also, he casts a spell called Corrupt, which is basically just he targets someone and then starts channeling on them and does a bunch of damage. Before you get hatchling stacks, it's kind of not that hard, but then if you kill all these hatchlings and then you cast Corrupt on you, you're probably dead. So we decided to skip these because they're not worth much count. This pack we do decide to fight because the boss tends to move around a lot, and these are near the boss room. So we don't want these alive while we're fighting the boss, otherwise they could accidentally pull. This is the ground dodge. If you get hit by this, it's an MC. And then this is the Corrupt. You can see he picked the Shaman. These are like dying, so you can see the Shaman is like getting hit by the Corrupt while he's having this dot. I give him some of my Lightsmith thing, so I guess he's able to heal through it. He also walled. I have Corrupt here on the mage. You can, if you have Night Elf or an Invis, you can also use that to negate the Corrupt. Okay, so that's these mobs. Now we're on to the final boss, Erudax. The boss actually starts off in kind of a convenient part of his phase, so you pull him and he immediately does an AoE. Here's the Void Surge AoE, it just pulses damage. This is the first one is kind of easy, and you'll see why. After that, he does Shadow Gale. By the way, when he does the Void Corruption, it spawns all these tentacles. If you walk into this tentacle, you're going to get stunned for 4 seconds and take a bunch of damage. And if you get stunned during Shadow Gale, you're probably dead. Paladin can soak these with Bubble, and DK can soak these with AMS, so keep that in mind. So he's casting Shadow Gale. You notice I'm panning my camera around. Basically, this spawns like a really, really large void circle around the room that slowly inches like inward. The reason I'm panning my camera is because I'm trying to see where the edges of this are, by looking at the edges. Once you've done this a few times, you can kind of feel like where the center is. And your goal here is to move the boss to the middle. So you end up like this. If you are in this circle, then you kind of just will die. So you want to, it's like a little bit of leeway, but not really much leeway. So you want to pull the boss basically aggressively towards the middle. And you also have to like gauge exactly where the middle is by looking around the room quickly. While you're in here, you need to spread out. He puts this Abyssal Corruption dot. It's a circle on everyone. If you overlap, then you're probably going to die. He usually puts out 3 on the DPS. Our DK pre-AMS'd it, so he didn't get a circle. If you overlap this circle, you'll probably die. After this, you notice the circles are still on. After the Shadow Gale, he's gonna spawn some adds, the same hatches as before, and he also does a tank hit, which is a knock, by the way, so don't get knocked into tentacles. Usually after the Shadow Gale, I try to position myself on a wall, so when he knocks me, I just get knocked into the wall. This Crush, by the way, does massive damage. Make sure you have a big cooldown. Here he is, Garden of Ancient Kings, boom. And we get knocked into the wall, so we don't randomly get 10'd. By the way, after he spawns these hatchlings, it's kind of important to not kill these hatchlings immediately because he's gonna do Void Surge after, and you don't want the magic debuff with the Void Surge. Sometimes your healer's like super strong and it just works out, but ideally these are not dying until the Void Surge. Although they do kind of need to die like right now because you'll notice the boss in 17 seconds is going to give us Abyssal Corruption. If we have this magic debuff dot with Abyssal Corruption, it's going to be a death. Next he casts Shadow Gale, so it's the same way as before. I'm like panning my camera, looking for the middle of the circle. I decide that it's here, and I move the boss there. This, by the way, takes a lot of practice, I think. The first couple times, I guarantee tanks are going to mess this up. Then he does the spread dot. We're kind of getting the easy version here because we have a DK and he's pre-AMSing every time. Normally there's 3 dots that you have to spread out. Next he does Void Infusion, which is what spawns the adds. And the next one after that is going to be Crush. Well, I'm not near a wall, so I decide to bubble this one and soak a few tendies and then get aggro on the adds. And then it's a repeat. He just does that over and over again. This boss is very, very difficult. I foresee many groups wiping on this, especially in the early weeks. That is going to be it for the Grim Batol complete guide. Thank y'all for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitch chat. All right, peace out, everyone.